Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of OG Conspiracy News. Welcome to my channel. I'm Ann Blackwood, your Silicon Valley Sage Sister, here to bring consciousness to the forefront of your daily life to make life a little kinder and simpler. So, topically today, there has been some things going on in the collective consciousness when it comes to AI, and trans ideology is in the news today because of a bill being put before Congress. So I want to talk about these things, and first I want to talk about AI. And you know, when we think about artificial intelligence, one of the first things we think about is like Terminator, iRobot, Black Mirror, that AI artificial intelligence movie, Westworld, the list goes on. When most of us think of AI, the first thing we think about is autonomous robots thinking for themselves and often going crazy and trying to take over the world. The thing is that in the spiritual and other communities, this discussion of AI taking over the world is becoming more and more of a reality every day. I don't know if all of you will remember this, but being a late 80s baby and growing up in the age of the upcoming of the internet, I remember seeing this video really early on into the days of the internet. Check this out.
Pizza Palace. Is this Mr. Kelly?
Yes?
Thank you for calling again, sir. I show your national identification number as 610-204-999-8-45-54610. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. I see you live at 736 Montrose Court, but you're calling from your cell phone. Are you at home?
I'm just leaving work, but I'm...
Oh, we can deliver to Bob's Auto Supply.
No, I'm on my way home. How do you know all this stuff?
We just got wired into the system, sir.
Oh, well, I'd like to order a couple of your double meat special pizzas.
Sure thing. There'll be a new $20 charge for those, sir.
What do you mean?
Sir, the system shows me that your medical records indicate that you have high blood pressure and extremely high cholesterol. The total is $67 even.
$67?
Well, that includes the delivery surcharge of $15 to cover the added risk to our driver of traveling through an orange zone.
I live in an orange zone?
Now you do. Looks like there was another robbery on Montrose yesterday.
But I want double meat.
Well, I'm sure you can afford the $67 then. You just bought those tickets to Hawaii. They weren't cheap, eh? Oh, but I see you checked out the budget beach bum at the library last week.
I'll get the Sprout subs.
Good choice, sir. Gotta watch that waist if you're hitting the beach, eh? 42 inches. Wow.
That's how much?
Just between you and me, there's a $3 off coupon in this month's Total Men's Fitness magazine. Your wife Betty subscribes to that, right? Anyhow, clip that and it's $19.99 even. Whoa, looks like you maxed out on all your credit cards. Bring cash, okay?
I don't know how you feel watching that video, but I know when I first watched it and I was like, I was a kid. I was like, I don't know exactly when that video came out, but it came out in the early 2000s, I want to say. And I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, how awful would that reality be? And that was the point of the video, was to be a warning about how the internet and people with the internet could control our lives in ways that we don't want it to be controlled. More and more this is happening every day with artificial intelligence, which is why I feel like it's important to discuss. We have things like Neuralink. There was the recent scandal. Actually, what caused me to decide to make this part of this video was the fact that there is this new scandal that's happened on Twitch, which is a video game streaming platform. For those of you who don't know what Twitch is, people like my mom watch this video. And there was this Twitch scandal that happened recently where you can, what they call deep fake things with artificial intelligence. And this is happening where people's faces are getting put onto other bodies, being quite very, realistically portrayed as saying things they didn't say. First, this was happening with celebrities. Now this is happening with porn and everyday people or internet celebrities. You could do this with literally anybody. Imagine with me for a second. If you found out that someone was buying porn with your face on it when you had zero consent in the matter. That's freaking scary. And this can happen more and more every day. You know, we brush it off when it happens to celebrities because we think that for some reason they deserve what they get because they've put themselves out into the public sphere. But they don't. Not at all. And nor does anybody else. So we need to start thinking about all these ramifications when it comes to artificial intelligence and what people are doing with them. And I personally think rolling it back. Now, I know I've been having conversations with my fellow OG conspiracy theorists, as I call them, OG conspiracy realists. And, you know, several of them think that it can't be stopped. Like, literally, it can't be stopped. It's already in the minds of our children. It's going to be taking over the birds. And I love you, Andreas. It's going to be taking over the whales. And then on the other side, there are those of us who still think that because it's still controlled by human beings in computers, it could be stopped. Now, can we stop the humans that are controlling it? That is really the question, because right now it's not a matter of whether or not the AI can be stopped, but it's a matter of whether or not technology, the convenience, mentality, you know, the instant gratification mentality, the way of life that we've come to experience, has that become so ingrained in us that we can't stop the people who are controlling the AI from creating more. You know, we have people like Elon Musk who say things like, well, it's gonna happen anyway, so I want to do it right. Like, come on, guys. Like, that is the worst excuse I've ever heard. Like, Elon Musk literally acknowledges the dangers of AI and then says, but we can't stop it, so I want to just try to do it right. No, we could stop it if the human beings that control it were not allowed to create more of it. So, just the other day, in my group that I'm a part of, Woven Earth Collective, we were looking at AI-created art. And one of our community leaders was playing around with making art through AI. And that is how they get ya. They find one thing that you're okay with, which makes it so that you have to go along with anything else that it's going to be involved in. Because you're complicit in the making of it possible. And we have this mentality in this world of, you know, all or nothing. But come on, guys, we are human beings who are capable of nuance. And yes, there are some really awesome things that you can do with AI to help humanity, just like there are some really awesome things you can do with the internet to help humanity. However, if we continue down this road of all or nothing mentality, we're going to wind up like that movie Idiocracy. Like, I feel like that's a movie everybody should watch because it shows you, just like that video I just showed you, where we could get to if we don't start taking a step back, rolling things back, putting a stop to certain things that are bad for us because we have this all or nothing mentality of, well, if it's okay here, then I guess it's going to have to be okay here. It doesn't have to be okay over here just because it's okay over here. It doesn't have to be done here just because it's useful over here. And yes, there are some parameters to the way reality works, the 3D reality works, that, you know, it can be difficult to restrict access to certain things. But we're gonna have to figure it out if we want to maintain a world that is happy and healthy, or attain a world that is happy and healthy, because right now we are losing it faster and faster every day. And it's because of things like letting AI control how the ads are on our computers. Let's see, what are some of the other things on my... There was this new electronic tattoo that they at, gosh, what was it? Like some national science conference. There was a new electronic tattoo they were talking about, and it was freaky because the woman talking about it, there was this clip going around, she was literally saying, you know, we can get kids to have this electronic tattoo that tracks you, just if not for the sake that kids are going to want to get tattoos to make their parents pissed. Like, what? We think that people, well, some people think that people can be virtuous. Some people think there are just, everybody's evil. And there are some really evil people out there. I'm not going to have the argument today of whether or not humans are inherently virtuous or inherently evil, but there are some really evil people who know what they're doing, who manipulate the crap out of people because they understand the psychology of people. And to act like the psychology of people doesn't exist is silly, which is why I want to talk about trans ideology today. Now, let me see if there's anything else that I want to mention. Yeah, no, I think that's it on the AI front. You know, I think we really need to, when it comes to artificial intelligence, really think about, you know, do we want to get to the point of idiocracy, even if we're not at a, you know, even if we don't end up in a world where robots are controlling the earth like the Matrix, you know, do we really want to get to a point where we are so stupid because we have been taken over by this convenience culture and the need for instant gratification that we end up in a world like the world of idiocracy? Like, I know the idea of not having fresh water and instead only being able to drink Gatorade because there is no water, that doesn't sound fun to me. Does that sound fun to you? Does it sound fun to you to have a world where all the food is artificially processed and made out of God knows what because we can't grow crops? Because there's no water and only Gatorade? That's the world of idiocracy if you haven't seen the movie. And people are stupid, and prostitution is a thing, and that's very, very prevalent in that movie, and so many other things that because of the convenience culture and the idiocracy of it all, you have to see the movie. We don't want to end up in a world where we don't want to end up in the world of the Matrix. We don't want to end up in the world of idiocracy. We don't. I don't. So, to move on to my next topic of today, it comes up for me a lot, and you know, I've talked about in the past, especially when it comes to what I call my Taste of the Sanctuary of the Awakened content, you know, these issues surrounding children when it comes to trans ideology, and that's actually coming up today in the presentation of the what was it called, Youth Gender Bill, HB1 or I think it was SB 0001 or something like that. And this was the definition I found, which was this bill, and I've kind of shortened it just to get the point across because there were some extra sentences in there that were just legalese that weren't important to the conveying the point. So this bill prohibits a healthcare provider from performing on a minor medical procedure if purpose of enabling a minor to identify with, live as a purported identity inconsistent with the minor's sex. And, you know, I feel like when we start getting into these topics like kids versus adults, like when we start breaking it down to the symptoms rather than talking about it when it comes to the root of the problem, we're getting lost in the sauce. And that's not to say that we shouldn't talk about, you know, if as these things, you know, continue to feel like they're getting out of our control, at least put the kibosh on it in some places rather than others. I do get that. I do get at least wanting to stop it first when it comes to kids and then deal with the adults. Like, I get that thought process, even if it's unconscious. Because at this point we have this sort of live and let live ideology when it comes to adults, which I understand. I understand on the one hand wanting to let adults do what they're gonna do, but where do we draw the line with that? You know, things like self-ID and having that be what therapists use as the way of treating patients. Like, is that the responsible thing to do? Is it the responsible thing to do? Is it the loving, caring, and kind thing to do to not question somebody when they want to make unalterable decisions about their lives? You know, things they can't come back from. Is it the responsible thing to do to not question that? Is that what's loving and caring to do? Is that in any way how our medical professionals should be handling the situation? I don't think so. I think if someone wants to make a decision that will make their life different in a way that they can't come back from forever, that is something that should be thought about for a while. And I don't know about you, but to me, this seems like obvious that we should sit down and really think about the choices we make that are going to alter our lives forever. But that's not the way we're handling trans ideology in America. Especially the fact that this is leaking into children's lives concerns me because of that. But our therapists, our psychologists, our psychiatrists are being told that if they question someone's self-ID at all, they will lose their license. Clown world, hello? Like, seriously? Seriously. Like, that is what medical professionals are there to do, is help you figure out what your medical stuff is, especially when it comes to psychologists. And there's nowhere else in the medical profession where self-diagnosis is acceptable, except in this one case with trans ideology. It's like, why have we abandoned what we know? You know, it's a whole trope, you know, about why you shouldn't get on Google and self-diagnose and why you should go to a doctor. Why is this being abandoned? And it's another example of how the ideologies like this that come out of the left that are so extreme contradict themselves. You know, there are other places where they'll be, oh, you gotta go to the doctor, you gotta trust the doctor, you gotta trust the science. We've all been hearing that a lot in the last 2 years. You gotta trust the science. Except for trans ideology. A great example of this is that there are multiple studies at this point, the most recent by Ken Zucker, where it shows that there are 90% reversion rates when it comes to kids that are reaching 19, 20, 21. If they're not medicalized, 90% of the kids who get to adulthood without having any sort of medical procedure or pharmaceuticals and just get the mental health treatment that they need for gender dysphoria, they end up in a position where they say, you know what? I was just a kid, actually, who was experiencing teenage normal things. Often we're finding that actually, in fact, they were coming to terms with the fact that they were gay, not born in the wrong body, which honestly, this idea of being born in the wrong body, like, doesn't make sense to me on any level, you know, 3D, 5D, scientific, or metaphysical. Like, how can you be born in the wrong body? If you're looking at it from a scientific perspective, you can't be born in the wrong body because you're born in the body you're born in. But if you're looking at it from a metaphysical perspective, the leading sort of thought on that is that if you believe in reincarnation, that we make a soul contract with the, the universe. And so we've gone and decided before we're born into the next body, we're born into all the things that we're gonna do, including the sex that we're born into, and so if we have these souls that aren't gendered because they're, unembodied constructs, whatever they're made out of, our soul isn't gendered according to that. And so, we can't be born in the wrong body if we've made the decision beforehand to be born into that body, to be born into that life. There is nowhere that it makes sense from an ideological standpoint that we could be born into the wrong body unless you think that your soul is gendered. Not even gendered. Let's just stick with biological sex. If you think your soul has a sex, because gender is a construct in the sense of, there are some things biologically that are like male and female, but ideologically, a lot of what we think of as masculine and feminine are overlappable, and that's been proven in studies. So I feel like the fact that on this basis, with all of these contradictory beliefs, we need to consider how people are even coming to these conclusions, coming to actually think that they believe in these things. And what I've recognized is that the average person, their belief systems are based on their ideals, but their belief systems aren't based on anything they've created for themselves. We've, a lot of people these days have what they consider their ideals, which were also placed on them by, nurture rather than nature, based on how they grew up, and the community that they lived in. And so the average person is hearing something that they're told to be true and based on their ideals going, okay, that makes sense, and not doing any further research, not putting any further thought into it. And really, is that what we want our belief systems to be based on? Like, I remember when I first came to this realization, and it shocked me how much of that was true. And I sat down and did a whole period of time of inventorying and working on my belief systems. And that ended up becoming a part of my intuitive lifestyle course. Because it is so important to not just not just let the garden of our mind be seeded by the wild. We want to be gardening our own mind, making sure that what's in there is ours and not just randomly planted by birds passing by, squirrels passing by. I don't know. I guess if there are people who want that, I don't want that. And so, to end this, I want to have us leave here thinking about a couple of things. First of all, what if the news actually told us the truth? In the sense of, what if the news, when it created its headlines, said things in a matter-of-fact way rather than a manipulated way? For instance, what if the news headline said, people are deciding more and more every day that the solution to being happy, whole, and appreciated is cutting off their body parts? Do you not think that more people, would you not, if you had been first introduced to the concept of trans ideology with that statement, people these days don't feel happy, whole, or appreciated, and their solution to this is cutting off their body parts. Would that not have made you think twice about just thinking that the caring thing to do is just let people go about this lifestyle as they are? Like, is that not a shocking sentiment to you? And what I think that we really need to be thinking about is, what is so wrong with this world that so many people feel, and not just in the trans community, and not just people suffering with with gender dysphoria, but so many people in the world don't feel appreciated, feel like they have to go to extreme lengths to be special, be considered special, and don't feel, it's because they don't feel whole as they are. What is wrong with this world that so many people feel that way? So many people feel broken, stuck, depressed, miserable, that enough of them have decided that what was once an extreme solution is now the obvious and should be like easily accessible solution, which is cutting off their healthy body parts, damaging themselves for life with medications that are going to shorten their life, make them sick for life. And what is wrong with this world that we have adults that are so unhappy, which, I mean, this has been the tale of time, you know, adults projecting their own crap onto kids. What is so wrong with this world that we now have adults that are so unhappy, so unhealthy, feeling so unappreciated and so broken inside that they want children to be damaging themselves for life to validate their ideology? Like, we know at this point, and it's unfortunate that we don't have any real long-term studies, but we know, we're seeing with this most recent generation that's been allowed to do this, which is why clinics like these are shutting down in other places that were the, you know, forerunners of this kind of stuff, that, you know, these kids are sterilizing themselves for life. These kids are giving them bone damage for life. These kids are, you know, things like the estrogen birth control that these boys are being put on to feminize them gives them heart damage that will not just can, but will shorten their life. What is so wrong with this world that we think that the solution to being special, what is so wrong with this world that we feel like we are not whole without being considered special by everybody else? And why do we think that the solution to being special is doing things that are going to hurt us? You know, think, I bring up this cutting off your healthy body parts thing and phrase it that way because A, that's what's happening, and B, the dangers of surgery. We know the dangers of surgery. We know the risks. We know how plastic surgery can go wrong and how more likely it is to go wrong than be perfectly right. Like, listening to Jordan Peterson interview that girl, and I wish I could remember her name. I should have written it down. Talk about not being able to look at her chest after having top surgery because of what happened to her nipples. Like, more and more kids who are being allowed to do this are coming out every day and saying, I wish the adults had stopped me. I wish the adults hadn't affirmed this in me. More and more every day. You know, and the so-called trans community, you know, is trying to come out and say these people aren't really trans or weren't really trans, you know. I think we need to get back to trying to understand gender dysphoria rather than just treating the symptoms, because we know that treating the symptoms does not make us better. it masks what's making us feel bad for long enough that hopefully we'll get better ourselves. That's the whole basis, of even things like taking medications for being sick. Like something like when you're sick with some sort of nasal infection, for instance, and you do something to like an expectorant or something to dry up your nasal passages. That's not actually curing the sickness. That's covering up a symptom in hopes that it'll be covered up for long enough that you don't have to deal with it until your body naturally makes yourself better. We have to get to the roots of the problems if we want to cure the problems. And there is a problem in this world when so many people, and like I said, not just people who are experiencing gender dysphoria, because, though there are more and more people experiencing it every day, which we have to look at, the fact that, and this is no new thing, the fact that more and more women every day, it used to be that gender dysphoria was something that mostly men experienced, and in very, very, very low numbers. Very low numbers. And now more and more every day, not only are more men experiencing gender dysphoria, but more women are experiencing gender dysphoria. I should even say boys and girls. And the thing is that being uncomfortable with our bodies is a normal part of human life, not just for kids, not just for teenagers, although it hits its peak usually as a teenager. And we used to understand that this was normal. And we used to understand, like in my generation, it was cutting, where all of the girls would compete with each other, even though it wasn't outwardly said that this was what was going on. They would compete with each other to wind up in the hospital to get attention by cutting themselves. This is just another extreme version of that we're experiencing. Before that, it was anorexia and bulimia. Like, it is well documented that these kinds of things can be contagious in circles of teenage girls. And starting as young as in elementary school, as a kid, before you even hit puberty. We know this. So why aren't we looking at the roots of these problems? Why aren't we doing things like asking ourselves the question, why are there so many miserable people out there, and actually trying to solve this problem? Because we can solve this problem. People don't have to be miserable. That's why I do what I do. There's this awesome story that I want to, I intended on sharing it the other day, and I want to share it now. There's this awesome story that Wayne Dyer tells of the 4 philanthropists, where there is a war-torn country where all of these prisoners end up in a prison as prisoners of war. And the first philanthropist comes by and realizes that their water isn't very good. And it's really dirty and not coming from a clean source. And so this first philanthropist says, I want to make sure these prisoners have clean water. And his wish is granted, and he walks away feeling fulfilled in his purpose. The second philanthropist comes by and sees that the prisoners are sleeping on rocks and says, I want these prisoners to have bedding. And so his wish is granted, and he gets them bedding, and he walks away feeling fulfilled in his purpose. Now the third philanthropist comes by and sees that they're still eating gruel. And so he says, you know what, I want to donate all my crops and all my money to making sure all of these people have good food. And his wish is granted, and his purpose was fulfilled. Now the fourth philanthropist comes by, and he's living at spiritual levels of consciousness rather than ordinary human awareness. So he recognizes that there are keys. And so he sneaks in at night, gets the keys, and frees all of the prisoners. And what the story tells us, and I want to quote this directly from Wayne Dyer, because I love how he says this, and I happen to have it next to me. This story tells us then that when living at levels of ordinary human awareness, there is nothing wrong with those who are out there who can help us suffer in comfort. And many of us have learned to do that, because many of us have learned to suffer in comfort. But we don't have to suffer. That's how all of society around the world is being set up more and more every day, is not to be happy and whole and healthy, but to suffer in comfort. How fucked up is that? And the thing is that there are those people who have keys to the prisons that can open the prisons. And that's what fuels my whole dharma and purpose, is to be the person with the keys to the prisons. There are keys to the prisons, and we are living in prisons. But if we don't recognize it, if we don't realize that we're setting ourselves up to suffer in comfort by masking symptoms rather than getting to the roots of the problems to get and stay healthy, we will end up like Idiocracy. All right, guys, thank you for joining me for another video. Don't forget to check out the links in the description. And as always, may the energies you serve you well. The flash sale is ending today. That's all I'm going to say. You can find out more about that in the description. Let's keep making our way through, and I'll see you in the next one.